The St. Louis Cardinals won the National League Central in 2022, but moving into 2023, there is going to be a different team on the field. No Albert Pujols, no Yadier Molina, but still a fantastic way to look forward to this team. We're going to break it down here at the Row Report edition of the OK Baseball Podcast. And hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of the Row Report here at the OK Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao. You can find me on Twitter at Row Report. We are going to break down the St. Louis Cardinals today as we continue on our team preview. And man, has it been fun so far, but this is one of the ones that I'm really excited about. I know a lot of people in the feed are really excited about the Cardinals as well. I've seen plenty of comments saying, when are the Cardinals coming? Well, I saved a good one for this one. Joining me on this episode today, Daniel Shoptaw from Meet Me at Musial's podcast. You can find him on Twitter at C70. Daniel, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to talk St. Louis Cardinals with you.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's get right into it. Let's talk St. Louis Cardinals baseball here. Last season in the National League Central, they win it 93-69 after a weird collapse by the Milwaukee Brewers. But we talked about Yadier Molina, what a fun season that was, bringing Albert Pujols back. What a fun season that was. Take me back in your perspective as someone who covers the Cardinals. What did 2022 feel like for you?
It was a lot of fun all the way around. It's not something you get all the time. You can have a successful team, and it's not necessarily a blast to watch, but especially in the second half, it seemed like there was something every night that was just remarkable.
Gotta love that. Yeah, this team was a really fun team to watch in 2022. When you look at it from the perspective of last year with letting Albert Pujols get his 700th home run in a Cardinals uniform, watching Yadier Molina finally get, be sent off into the sunset. Adam Wainwright coming back for one more year, even though I thought he was also done. It was just a really magical season for the Cardinals last season. Now, with Yadier Molina gone, someone who was the backstop for the Cardinals for a very long time, you filled the shoes with the division rival catcher, Willson Contreras. Let's start moving in and start swiveling into the free agency talk. Willson Contreras is now your catcher. He goes from blue to red. How crazy is that? And not a bad addition to this Cardinals team after losing someone like Yadier Molina.
No, because as much as we love Yachty, and as much as he still brought a lot defensively, the last couple of years offensively have really struggled. And so even getting a league average catcher when you're looking at OPS plus and things of that nature is a huge addition, and better than that. So the offensively, especially that jumping catcher is going to be huge. To bring in a guy, that pretty much everybody hated, because I think that was part of his deal, right? He's even said that that's part of his game. He wants everybody to hate him. That's not on his team. But coming to St. Louis, he said all the right things about being very excited to be here, a team that he's watched, and you could not ask for better answers. And I think he's going to, he's got an energy that, again, when he's on your team, you really like. And so it's going to be fun to see how that happens. Having a chance to steal a Cub is always kind of fun too, especially if they're not in their past their prime or anything. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Contreras can do on a full-time basis. There's a lot of things going on the defensive side, with the bigger bases and the pickoff moves being limited, that, there's going to be more steals that we're used to. But I think that when you factor in what he's doing offensively, it's still probably going to be an upgrade over what we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, I can't wait to see him. And I think you're right. I think you're definitely getting an offensive upgrade. Defensive, you're probably going to take a step back, but not many people kept runners at bay like Yadier Molina did over his career. They always love to put that stat up, how it was since Yadier Molina took the plate, how many steals each team had. And the Cardinals were always way below everybody else. Just absolutely insane. Speaking of the rest of free agency, that's really all you saw from St. Louis for the most part, right? Everything else seems to be kind of like departures. Jose Quintana, who you got in the trade deadline last year, was just a half-year rental. He heads over to the Mets. Corey Dickerson, who was kind of your fourth outfielder for the most of his time last year, heads to the Nationals. And then you see Alex Reyes move to the Dodgers after his once all-star season. And then after that didn't really pan out. What's the biggest hit of the departures in free agency, you think, for this squad?
Uh, you know, fortunately, none of them are probably huge. You hated to see Alex Reyes go just because you followed that story forever, right? The top prospect coming up, been hurt, lost a lot of time, is able to come in and be an all-star closer for, and then struggled after that, and then injuries as well. Hopefully he turns out and does well for the Dodgers. I don't think the Cardinals had any real legitimate chance of keeping him. There's just no way. But just sentimentally, I think that's the biggest loss. The Cardinals are fortunate. Again, they've locked up the big keys to their team, and they have a lot of young guys that aren't going anywhere. This coming year, there's a couple of guys, Jordan Hicks, Jack Flaherty, that are going to go to free agency. We'll see what happens there. Could be a little bit more impactful, but last year, not so much.
I definitely want to get into that youth movement, and I definitely want to get into this pitching rotation here. We're talking the St. Louis Cardinals 2023 preview. But first, we have to mention, before we mention anybody else on the rest of this show, last year, Paul Goldschmidt won the 2022 National League MVP. I feel like we have to start there on looking at this lineup. Is it even remarkably... You think there's even a remarkable chance that he comes close to last season? I know a lot of people like to put him in their top 10 for top players of all time. Nolan Arenado usually sits there as well. But what a fun season Paul had last year. Do you think he can even get close to what he did in 2022?
He could probably approximate it. He's not going to reach those heights, but he's still got, I would say, a good season or two of elite baseball in him. I expect Nolan will have a better year than he will this year. Just if nothing else, if you look at spring training, it's been pretty insane for both those guys already. But yeah, I think Goldie's still going to be your top guy. He's not. Yeah, he's not going to be. Is he a top 10 MVP guy? That's believable.
Gotta love it. As for the rest of the team, obviously we talked about Nolan Arenado, a player that had a great 2021, but a really upsetting 2022 is Tyler O'Neill. You look at the rest of this outfield that's young. The youth movement is really where you can start having this conversation. Dylan Carlson, Lars Nootbaar, some other prospects that are coming up that we'll get to later in the show. Tyler O'Neill, I'm surprised, to be completely honest, that he is still on this squad. I thought he might have got moved there in the offseason, maybe for a pitching prospect or a pitching rotation, not a prospect, but an MLB ready type pitcher. What kind of year does Tyler O'Neill have to get him back to possible MVP race kind of player that we thought he was in 2021?
Yeah, I think the Cardinals, they might have made a move with him, but they would have also been selling very low on a guy that has, 40 home run possibility. He did some different training in the offseason. He's doing a little bit more to try to stay healthy. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think if he's healthy and can play 130, 140 games or more, you'll see a little bit closer to what you've seen out of Tyler O'Neill in the past. Will he ever have the year that he had, in 2021? I don't know for sure, but I think he's still young and there's still time for that to happen. So yeah, Tyler O'Neill, this is a big year for him, right? I mean, this is the year that if he, he gets a make or break to some degree, because if he struggles again with injuries, if he struggles again, just in general, the Cardinals may move on after that. And I hate to see it. He's been around for a little bit now, but yeah, I think that's where he's at. I mean, this is huge, and I don't know that there's any reason to think he won't be able to rise to that challenge, but it is going to be a challenge.
I agree. Looking at right now with the projected opening day lineup, you just go from Yadier Molina, Albert Pujols, the old timers, into this new youth movement. 5 players right now on the projected opening day roster, just in the bats alone, are under 25 years old. You add in Brendan Donovan, who's 26, to that mix as well. You got 6 in this conversation. But Dylan Carlson, Lars Nootbaar, Juan Yepez, Brendan Donovan, Alec Burleson, and Nolan Gorman all are projected to make this opening day roster as of right now. How does it feel to see the new wave of Cardinals hitting your screens in 2023?
It's kind of interesting. I mean, the Cardinals have always been good at this, right? This is what they do in part to kind of manage payroll, in part because they've been really good at developing players, is they never have like a real defined end to an era or something. There's always somebody, but this is a little bit larger than normal. These are starters. These are guys that are going to be significant contributors. So it's a lot of fun. I'm hopeful that we'll see all these guys. There's a guy that I know we're going to talk about in a little bit that's kind of maybe clouding this picture for some of these players. But overall, these guys are going to get a lot of chances this year, either starting or off the bench, or DH or something of that nature. And the Cardinals only go as far as these guys take them.
There's even younger guys on this squad as well. And I think you just kind of alluded to it, that have the possibility to maybe make their debut this year. Not sure if it's going to be an opening day type player just because of the level of greatness they have on the squad right now. But what they're doing in spring training is really exciting, especially what we just saw on Saturday from Jordan Walker, an outfielder who could be the guy that helps push Tyler O'Neill out maybe in that make or break kind of year you mentioned. And then there's a shortstop right now named Mason Wynn, who is just absolutely incredible. They're insane. Both of these players are 20 and 21, respectfully. I'm sure you probably have other ones you're paying attention to as well, but these are like the mainstream guys right now that are really killing it in spring training. The youth movement is for real in St. Louis, and what a time to be alive. What's your thoughts on Wynn and Walker?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of fun watching these guys in spring training, and there's a lot of buzz about Jordan Walker. It's not ruled out that he's going to start the season. I am not one that necessarily believes that. I think the Cardinals want to see Nootbaar, Carlson, O'Neill, Burleson, even Burleson. They want to see these guys and see what they can do for a while. And it's no slight to send Jordan Walker to AAA because he hadn't even been there yet. That said, 2 home runs on Saturday. It's 3 on the season in the spring. For this week, he's hitting, I think around 400 or so. He's making it difficult. It is a lot of fun to watch. Mason Wynn has been a lot of it fun as well. We know about his defense. We know about the arm that he has and the 100-mile-per-hour throws to first base. His bat has been a little bit stronger this spring than I expected it to be. And, he's still a guy that is probably going to go AA, maybe AAA, probably AAA, I guess, when you think about it. But August, September, if Paul DeJong isn't doing it, which he's is always questionable, and if there's an injury to a Tommy Edman or a Brendan Donovan, it's not out of the picture that they'll move Wynn up as well.
The story about Paul DeJong was really interesting. Him moving down to Memphis and trying to get things right. It seemed like he was really being a team player during that whole thing. It's someone who's been with the team for quite some time now. You see him, he's kind of looking like he's going to take a bench role in 2023. It's interesting because you had the kind of the conversation in 2021 between DeJong, Edmundo Sosa. Sosa gets traded to the Phillies. DeJong kind of stays there as a role player. Do you think this is one of the last kind of years we see DeJong in a Cardinals uniform?
Unless he's a starting shortstop by the end of the year, there's no way the Cardinals pick that up. And so it's so hard. I mean, you watched Paul DeJong, and his career has been a pretty straightforward downward spiral. I mean, he's got the defense, but offensively, he started off strong and then kind of dropped to league average, and then he's dropped to below league average. And now you just kind of hope he makes contact. Went to a lot of different places, did a lot of different work. We just haven't seen it yet in the spring. He's only had a couple of at-bats. He played today. I didn't get to see what he did today, but he's had some arm injuries that have kept him off the field. There's just so much that's going on there. I mean, he's got a contract that keeps him there for a while, but when it comes to May or June, if he's still not, if he's still hitting 140 with a whole bunch of strikeouts, it's a lot easier to cut him then and try to make find a solution. Now the backup shortstop isn't obvious. There's not a whole lot between Tommy Edman and Mason Wynn, and if Wynn's not ready, you're looking at some AAA guys anyway. But it's going to be really interesting to see what Paul DeJong does and how that translates to the rest of his career.
We talk about the crazy youth movement that's happening in St. Louis right now. It's not happening with the rotation. Uncle Charlie, Adam Wainwright, we're seeing him. We're seeing Miles Mikolas, excuse me, Jordan Montgomery, Jack Flaherty, Steven Matz, all over 27. Flaherty obviously being the youngest one at 27. If you don't include him, everyone's over the age of 30 in the starting rotation right now. It seems to be that with the conversation of how good this team looks in the lineup, the rotation seems to be the biggest question mark. Will pitching be able to hold up and keep them not only competitive in the NL Central, but able to make a playoff push and go farther than they did last season? What's your thoughts about all the question marks that are swirling around this rotation? And will Adam Wainwright ever come back down to earth after being, 17 years of MLB service time? Seems like this guy is just invisible.
Yeah, I mean, the questions around the rotation are fair. Even Wainwright, he ended last year in September struggling in part it turned out to be because of a physical. He changed his mechanics after being hit by a pitch. But even this spring, he's had a lower velocity again, kind of faulted to working out some kinks, and it's not necessarily time to panic yet. But he is 41, and you start to wonder how long that goes. Jack Flaherty's been dealing with some stuff this spring. He's had some injury issues. You don't necessarily know what you're getting there. Um, yeah, there are a lot of questions. If any of those guys falter, there are arms that are up there. There's Dakota Hudson. There's Matthew Liberatore. There's Jake Woodford. Not necessarily any of them that are just inspiring. I think the most Cardinal fans expected, or not necessarily expected, hoped that the club would go out and get a kind of a top of number 1, 2 starter to lock up, because nobody in that rotation except for Steven Matz is under contract for next season. They thought they'd go out and get somebody. They didn't. Maybe that's a trade deadline move. Maybe they're just hoping to get by with the number of arms and innings they can cover. But yeah, I think it's a rotation that has potential. The way Jordan Montgomery looked when he came over from New York last year, a good Adam Wainwright, a good Flaherty, splitting to 5. It's not over dominating or anything, but it'll win you games, especially with this lineup.
Jack Flaherty, to me, I think is the biggest question mark of this lineup, because we've seen him with injuries and have some big question marks back and forth. I truly believe that this is a make or break year for Jack Flaherty. If he can become maybe the ace that everybody hoped he would be, or is he one that's going to falter out and no longer be a St. Louis Cardinal? What's your thoughts on Flaherty? A little deep diver here on him. Do you think is an opportunity for him to get back to where he was in, say, 2020, or is it we're getting what we're seeing right now based on what we saw last season?
He's got to stay healthy. I mean, that's the biggest thing. When he's been healthy, even after he had the great run in 19, at the top, beginning of 21 was strong until he got hurt. If he can stay healthy, I think he's got a real good chance of having a solid year. We'll never see him do what he did in the second half of 19, but nobody does that. I mean, that was Bob Gibson level stuff. But he can be that ace of a staff if he puts it all together. This is huge for him because, like I said, he's a free agent at the end of the year. And you know what starting pitching goes for, right? Even mediocre starting pitching, but good starters or ace level starters. I mean, he could make a ton of money this offseason, either from the Cardinals or from somebody else. And he's got to go out there and show that he can do that. And hopefully he will. Like I said, he's been pushed back a little bit in the spring, dealing with some flu stuff, dealing with who knows what exactly. But once he gets out there, if he can get a really really strong pitcher.
Gotta love it. All right, let's hear your prediction for 2023 of the St. Louis Cardinals. Last season, they won the NL Central. 93 wins was enough to do that after the breakdown of the Milwaukee Brewers. Still don't know how that happened. And I'm still confused on why there's an idea of actually them selling again what they did 2 years ago. Anyways, I guess not your problem in St. Louis. That's a good thing to have. We're seeing the Cubs maybe make a rise. Maybe we're seeing them do some interesting things. The Reds are still acting like the Reds, and the Pirates actually spent some money in free agency. However, you only got to play these teams 13 times instead of 19 now. What's your thoughts on the NL Central, how the picture looks? Where does the St. Louis Cardinals end up? And 93.5 wins for 2023, over or under, Daniel?
Well, I think that, right now they're fairly clear. I feel like they're clear division favorites. The Brewers are up there still, but you're right. There's still some question marks in there. And then, what's going to happen with Corbin Burns and all the stuff that went around with arbitration and stuff like that. They always seem to overachieve what I expect them to do. But I think the Cardinals are favored there. And then there's the rest of the division where you're right. The Cubs are improving, but it's still not necessarily a 500 team. You're right. With not being able to play the Reds and the Pirates quite as often, although you do get some games against Oakland and some of the other teams that maybe you wouldn't have been seeing. I think this team, we always like to say that the Cardinals are grown in a lab for 88 wins, right? I mean, this is what they aim for. Um, to think they're going to get 94, I would say I'll go over, but not by much.
Okay. All right. I like it. So over and the favorites to win the National League Central. I'm with you. I agree. I think that that's exactly what's going to happen with this team, especially because I think they're going to be in a great spot come deadline time, and they're going to go and get some arms and bolster that rotation and get them ready. Maybe it's still a 1-year half rental like a Quintana again. And then they just go hard in free agency next year. However, I've been told by my friends who are Cardinals fans is every time I talk about they need pitching in the offseason, they look at me and say, well, you haven't paid attention to the Cardinals for a long time, have you? So we'll see how that one goes. But Daniel, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Brow Report here, covering the St. Louis Cardinals. Before you go, please let everyone know about your podcast, Meet Me at Musial's, and where they can find you and all the good stuff you have coming up.
Find me on Twitter at C70. You're going to find all the links and anything I put up there. You can find me at Musial over, anywhere you find podcasts. Also got a podcast, Gateway to Baseball Heaven. We do that. It's on Sunday nights, so you can find it at the same places. Cardconclave.com, usually where I write. Also write at a Substack, cardinal70.substack.com. So, throw out some stuff here and there. I haven't written as much, but I will be. And this coming up soon, I'll be doing my annual Playing Pepper series where we look at all the other teams through the eyes of other bloggers. So looking forward to doing that again.
Awesome. Fantastic. Really looking forward to seeing that. And if you're looking to hear more from Daniel, especially on the St. Louis Cardinals side, all that stuff will be in the episode description below. That's going to wrap it up here for this episode of the Brow Report here at the OK Baseball Podcast. We'll be back here with another team preview as we continue on. Opening day is just around the corner. We'll talk soon. Talk to you later. Have a good rest of your day. Take care. We'll see you next time.